Welcome, first-year physics students. I'm so excited to have you here for today's explainer, because we're going to do something pretty wild. We are going to fundamentally dismantle and then rigorously rebuild your entire understanding of the universe. Seriously, I want you to forget everything you've been taught so far about pre-existing coordinates, fixed spatial grids, and giant cosmic clocks ticking away in the background. Today, we're diving headfirst into Causal Memory Theory, or CMT, and stepping into a completely new paradigm.
So, let's kick things off with a radical question. To wrap our heads around some of the really complex math we'll be looking at today, I'm going to use a simple metaphor: paths in a dense forest. Normally we imagine space as this pre-existing forest that we just passively walk through, right? But what if the forest only exists because our footprints actively carved out those paths? Literally no steps, no forest. In this view, space and time aren't the stage where physics happens, they're actually the fossilized footprints of the action itself.
Okay, here's our syllabus for the lecture. We'll be journeying from the microscopic reality of discrete footprints all the way up to the macroscopic, continuous reality of what we perceive as a curved space-time forest. Let's jump right in.
Starting with Section 1, Beyond Pre-Existing Space, where we deconstruct the dualistic universe.
Now, you all know classical mechanics treats the universe as a dualistic system. You've got an empty container, which is space, and you place independent objects, which is matter, inside of it. Well, causal memory theory completely flips that on its head by proposing a radical monism. Basically, there's only one fundamental substance at play here. Both the spatial container and the material contents inside it are just phase-dependent manifestations of that one singular scalar substrate. They are literally cut from the exact same cloth.
And this formula right here beautifully illustrates our core concept. See, time doesn't actually exist in any meaningful way before events happen. Instead, time is mathematically derived as the rigid metric of accumulated causal traces. It's the direct physical measurement of exactly how many steps you've taken in the woods, not some detached clock arbitrarily ticking in a void. Every single new relational event adds to the sum, and that sum is what we experience as time.
Moving on to Section 2, the forest of discrete events, where we look at the axioms of the footprint. Okay, I need to be super clear about this next part. When we talk about the physical quantity of memory, which we denote with the Greek letter mu, do not picture a human brain. Seriously, completely scrub any idea of consciousness, biology, or computer hard drives from your mind. In CMT, memory is strictly a fundamental physical scalar quantity. It is nothing more than a discrete mathematical tally of past physical actions. Think of it quite literally as the physical depth of a footprint pressed into the mud. That's it.
So every single causal event is like a hiker taking a firm step in the woods, leaving a quantifiable scalar trace that permanently adds to the overall topological network. This math structure you're looking at is a directed acyclic graph. The nodes are the discrete steps, and the arrows dictate the definitive direction of causality. As you can see, the accumulation law dictates that the physical memory of any new event is exactly the sum of the memory inherited from its past parents, plus the newly generated relational novelty.
As this quote emphasizes, this mathematical tally isn't just an abstract label. It is the fundamental base substance of the universe. It's the literal dirt of our path. It's the raw material from which the rest of physics is eventually built. Everything you interact with, particle mass, quantum action, and even the curvature of spacetime emerges directly from this discrete combinatorial tally.
Which brings us to Section 3. What actually happens when millions of footprints pound the exact same path over and over again?
Well, we arrive squarely at the heart of quantum mechanics. Think about rainwater accumulating to form a puddle. It builds up until it suddenly overflows its boundaries, right? Similarly, continuous causal updates saturate the network's local capacity. The vacuum isn't infinite. It has a finite informational buffer. When that local capacity is entirely saturated, it triggers a discrete, sudden discharge of action. We call this mnemonic condensation, and it's this dynamic discharge that we actually perceive as discrete quantum phenomena.
The huge takeaway here is about Planck's constant, h. You've seen it in countless equations, but here it's not some arbitrary magical rule imposed on the universe. Rather, it's the natural, rigorously mathematical overflow limit of this physical accumulation of mu. Quantization emerges naturally from the underlying network structure. It's dynamically generated, not just blindly assumed in advance.
Let's look at Section 4, entropy and time's arrow. Why does time only move forward? Think back to our forest again.
Footprints, once pressed into the mud, cannot be unstepped. The continuous generation of causal novelty irreversibly crushes pure abstract potentiality into a crystallized structural reality. This irreversible, unyielding accumulation of mu creates a strict macroscopic thermodynamic flow. In a very real physical sense, the past is mathematically heavier than the future.
And this mathematical inevitability means the arrow of time is simply the macroscopic direction in which these historical records naturally unfold. Entropy grows because the causal network constantly maximizes microstate degeneracy. Time moves definitively forward because history can only accumulate. The physical substrate absolutely forbids it from ever being erased.
All right, Section 5. Let's dramatically shift our perspective from time to solid matter.
To understand matter, we need to talk about the hydrodynamic limit. Imagine zooming way out, to human scales. At this scale, trillions upon trillions of individual discrete steps begin to blend together. Just as countless individual water molecules form a smooth river, these discrete causal events blur into a continuous, fluid-like forest floor, neatly governed by continuous mathematical density fields.
So, how do particles emerge from this fluid floor? In CMT, matter is simply a complication in the paths of our forest. Take an electron. It's essentially a highly tangled topological knot, a complex braid of paths in the graph that creates severe resistance when trying to propagate. That topological drag is exactly what we call mass. A photon, however, is a perfectly smooth, traceless path. It slips through the network with zero topological friction, which is precisely why it's massless.
I just love this framework. All the particles and forces you study in the standard model aren't solid little billiard balls dropped into a void. They are rigorously defined topological knots and localized braids occurring directly within the causal network itself. The strong force? Just a specific three-strand braid. An antimatter is simply the exact geometric mirror image of a particle's knot. How elegant is that?
Finally, Section 6. Let's look at the ultimate boss of modern physics, gravity.
Notice how causal memory theory seamlessly arrives at Einstein's legendary field equation. But pay very close attention to this. CMT does not postulate a magical graviton particle, and it doesn't assume gravity is a standalone fundamental force. Instead, it derives gravity mathematically as the statistical hydrodynamic optimization of these physical memory paths interacting with the density field.
Let's bring back our forest metaphor one last time to make this crystal clear. Think of an extremely well-worn path through the woods. It becomes a deep, physical groove in the ground that naturally and effortlessly guides the steps of future hikers right into it. Similarly, a high density of mu actually curves the continuous geometry of the universe by altering the surface tension of the substrate. Information naturally seeks the path of least mnemonic cost. This physical deflection of causal paths is what we experience as gravitational pull.
This quote perfectly wraps up our main message for today. Space and time absolutely do not exist as an empty theater just waiting around for actors to appear. They are the macroscopic, fluid, geometric surface tension created by the constant, inexorable, and irreversible accumulation of countless discrete causal events. The universe is literally building itself from its own history.
I really hope this explainer has shown you the breathtaking elegance of this approach and how it resolves so many limits of traditional physics. I'll leave you with one final, provocative thought to ponder tonight. If you, and absolutely everything around you, are essentially complex mathematical knots of fossilized physical history, how will your next causal action physically reshape the topology of the universe? Thank you so much for joining me. Happy studying, and I'll catch you at our next lecture.